ChiefsAholic.
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 Superfan and notorious bank robber.
He went to every Kansas City Chiefs game. Now he's going to miss a lot of them.
Xavier Babidar was known online as ChiefsAholic. He stole hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Kansas City Chiefs fans are convinced the suspect is a popular Chiefs superfan.
An NFL Superfan just received a 17.5-year prison sentence for robbing 11 banks. This isn't your typical robber. It's a dedicated fan who used the stolen money to attend games and build a social media following.
Still undefeated with this guy, baby!
Meet Xavier Babidar, known to many as ChiefsAholic. He went from being a beloved figure in Chiefs Kingdom to a convicted felon. His tale weaves together fandom, addiction, and a crime spree that crossed 7 states. What could drive someone to such extremes? Well, let's find out. The Rise of ChiefsAholic. Picture a sea of red at Arrowhead Stadium, the roar of 76,000 fans reaching a fever pitch. Amidst this sea of the Chiefs faithful, one figure stands out, a man in a full Wolves costume, complete with a Chiefs jersey. This is Xavier Babidar, better known to fans as ChiefsAholic. Babidar's journey to superfan stardom began innocently enough. He started attending Chiefs games regularly, his enthusiasm growing infectious. But it was his decision to don the wolf costume, the mascot animal of the Kansas City Chiefs, that set him apart. Social media catapulted ChiefsAholic into the spotlight. His Twitter account exploded with followers, eager for his game day antics and passionate commentary. He became a staple at tailgates, a favorite of local news crews, and even caught the attention of players and team officials. But behind the mask, a darker story was unfolding. As ChiefSaholic's fame grew, so did the pressure to maintain this larger-than-life persona. Attending every game, buying merchandise, and traveling across the country doesn't come cheap, and Xavier Babidar had found a creative way to finance this larger-than-life superfan lifestyle. The first signs of trouble were subtle. Some fans noticed ChiefSaholic's sudden ability to attend every away game, even those requiring cross-country travel. Some wondered how he could afford this, and all the memorabilia he constantly showed off on social media. But in the world of sports fandom, where dedication is celebrated and excess is often encouraged, few really thought that far into it. As Babidar's criminal activities escalated, so did his profile in Chiefs Kingdom. He was living 2 extreme lives simultaneously: beloved mascot and wanted criminal. This rush of fame and fandom likely blended very dangerously with the adrenaline rush inherent to criminal activity, creating a troubling cocktail. The truth about ChiefsAholic would eventually come to light, leaving fans and the sports world understandably shocked. The man they had cheered alongside, taken selfies with, almost worshipped as a symbol of Chiefs fandom, was revealed to be a serial bank robber. Xavier Babidar had managed to steal nearly $850,000 in a 16-month crime spree spanning 7 states. The revelation sent waves through the NFL community. How could someone's life be so simultaneously visible and be hiding this massive secret? The case of ChiefsAholic brings up an interesting question about the ferocity of fan culture that fuels these explosions to fame for a select few participants, driving some to extreme measures to maintain it. But how exactly did this superfan become a super criminal? To understand that, let's go back to where it all began, with Babidar's first heist and the birth of ChiefsAholic's criminal alter ego. The first heist. Xavier Babidar had a lot going for him. He'd hit it big in his community, rocketing to notoriety and true fame. But the thing about personalities people cling to is that they're only entertaining as long as they're novel. At some point, they become boring. Not for Xavier. March 2nd, 2022. As the rest of Chiefs Kingdom eagerly awaited next season's kickoff, Xavier Barbuda was preparing for a very different kind of game day. Keeping up his whole operation of making games and displaying his unique gimmick was getting expensive, but there's an easy fix for that. The Great Western Bank in Clive, Iowa, seemed like any other financial institution on that chilly March morning. Employees settled into their routines, unaware that their lives were about to change dramatically. At precisely 9:38 a.m., Barbuda walked through the front door, this time trading his standard wolf mask for a less conspicuous ski mask. His heart raced with a mix of fear, excitement, and desperation as he approached the teller's window. He slid a note across the counter, his hand steady despite the inner turmoil. The teller's eyes widened with a surreal chill of realization every bank teller likely dreads. The note was a demand for money, with the implication of a firearm. For the bank employees, time seemed to stand still. One teller would later recount, quote, "Every morning I think about the robbery before I go to work," end quote. Another said, quote, "I still have nightmares about the bank being robbed," end quote. These weren't just statistics on a police report. They were real people whose sense of safety had been shattered in an instant. As Barbuda fled the bank with nearly $70,000 in cash, he thought he'd pulled off the perfect crime. But, as often happens on your first time at a new job, he'd made some mistakes. In his haste, he discarded one of his black gloves and $1,420 in a wooded area near the bank. A more experienced criminal likely would have left them somewhere not near the bank. These seemingly small oversights would later provide crucial DNA evidence linking him to the crime. The bank's surveillance cameras had also captured his every move, silently documenting his actions. Flush with cash, Barbuda's mind raced with possibilities. He now had to launder the money. His choice? Casinos. He made 2 separate deposits into his personal savings account, hoping to disguise the sudden influx of cash as gambling winnings. It was a risky move, but one that seemed to pay off in the short term. Weeks passed, and no one came knocking at his door. Barbuda grew bolder. He started planning his next target, convinced that he had outsmarted law enforcement. The thrill of the heist created an intoxicating sense of power and invincibility. Emboldened, this was just the opening play in a crime spree that would span 7 states and nearly $850,000 in stolen cash. As the 2022 NFL season approached, he was ready to take his criminal activities on the road, setting the stage for a series of increasingly daring heists. A trail of terror. 7 states, 16 months, and a trail of terrified bank tellers. That's the legacy of ChiefsAholic left behind as he transformed from NFL Superfan to serial bank robber. But how did one man manage to outsmart law enforcement across half the country? The answer lies in a bit of cunning, a dash of confidence, a skill for speed, and a decent amount of luck. Xavier Barbuda's crime spree read like a twisted road trip across America. From the cornfields of Iowa to the neon-lit casinos of Nevada, no bank was safe from the wolf in, well, wolf's clothing. He hit financial institutions in Nebraska, Tennessee, and Minnesota, always staying one step ahead of the authorities. Each robbery's haul helped to grow his notoriety and his bank account, fueling both a gambling addiction and his superfan lifestyle. The robberies piled up, and so did the stakes. Barbuda's methods grew bolder with time, his threats more menacing. In Bixby, Oklahoma, he upped the ante by brandishing what appeared to be a firearm, though it was later revealed to be a BB gun. He vaulted over teller counters, demanded access to vaults, and left a wake of traumatized employees in his path. The human cost of Barbuda's crimes was mounting, emotionally speaking, considering, BB gun. But this money helped keep up his persona and continue growing a social media following. Barbuda's success in evading capture for so long stemmed from his unconventional approach. His social media presence as ChiefsAholic provided the perfect alibi. Who would suspect the enthusiastic superfan posing for selfies with other Chiefs diehards of being a multi-state bank robber? The tactic allowed him to explain away his sudden influxes of cash to any who wondered. Babudar continued to launder much of his stolen cash through casinos, placing large bets on sport events. To the outside world, it appeared he was just a lucky or unlucky gambler with deep pockets. Yet, as with many criminals, overconfidence would prove to be Babudar's downfall. He made rookie mistakes, like returning to rob the same bank in Clive, Iowa, twice, possibly due to confusion after it had changed its name. He, however, had a pattern that authorities began to pick up on. He seemed to primarily target locations near NFL stadiums, and mostly on game weekends. With the target list narrowed, police were able to better preempt these robberies, and on December 16, 2022, they finally got him, while he fled a robbery of the Tulsa Teachers Credit Union in Bixby, Oklahoma, on a bicycle. Still, putting together the full scope of his crimes, and probably because of the BB gun, not judging him to be a danger of society, authorities released him on bond with an ankle monitor in February. But after 2 prior bets won him $100,000, he cut the ankle monitor and went on the run again. Though this time, the authorities knew exactly who they were looking for. He led authorities on a 4-month manhunt, robbing 2 more banks, but it all ended in California, when he was caught again, and this time without being released on bond. When the dust settled, the numbers were dramatic. Nearly $850,000 stolen in a cross-country crime spree that left bank employees traumatized and Chiefs fans bewildered. Xavier Babudar had lived out a real-life heist movie, with each robbery adding to his infamy. But as ChiefsAholic's luck finally ran out, investigators began to unravel the complex motivations behind his actions. The man behind the mask. Behind the wolf mask, and the ski mask, and beneath the face paint, Xavier Babudar's story runs deeper than many realize. His transformation from Chiefs superfan to serial bank robber reveals a life shaped by forces that began long before he ever stepped into a stadium. Babudar's childhood was marked by instability and hardship. Growing up, he bounced between shelters and temporary housing, never experiencing the security of a permanent home. This constant upheaval left lasting scars, creating a desperate yearning for stability and belonging that would follow him into adulthood. As ChiefsAholic, Babudar found a sense of community he'd always craved. His grey wolf suit became more than just a costume. It was an identity, a way to finally feel like he belonged somewhere. He didn't want to lose that and go back to the way things were. This, in part, fueled a gambling addiction that had taken hold of Babudar's life with a vice grip. What started as casual bets escalated into high-stakes wagers that consumed his thoughts, and, predictably, his finances. The rush of an occasional win provided temporary relief from his inner turmoil, while frequent losses drove him increasingly desperate. The pressure to maintain his ChiefsAholic persona grew as his following did. Attending every game, buying merchandise, and traveling cross-country required more money than Babudar could legitimately earn. The line between fandom and criminality blurred as he turned to robbery to fund his lifestyle and gambling habit. A series of increasingly bold and desperate robberies would ultimately bring ChiefsAholic's double life crashing down around him. The Bixby Blunder. ChiefsAholic's winning streak was about to come to an abrupt end with his first arrest. The Tulsa Teachers Federal Credit Union in Bixby, Oklahoma, was just another financial institution on a cold winter morning. But for Xavier Babudar, it represented the pinnacle of his criminal career and the beginning of his downfall. As he approached the building, his heart raced with a familiar cocktail of fear and excitement. This time, the stakes were higher, and Babudar's actions more reckless than ever before. Inside the credit union, chaos erupted as Babudar made his move. In a shocking display of new aggression, he vaulted over the teller counter, brandishing what appeared to be a firearm. His voice, usually reserved for cheering on the Chiefs, now carried a chilling threat. "Open the vault, or I'll shoot you." The terror in the air was palpable as employees scrambled to comply with his more aggressive demands. As Babida stuffed a large bag with cash, he couldn't have known that his luck was about to run out. Outside, law enforcement was closing in. The Bixby Police Department and the FBI had been tracking his movements, connecting the dots between similar robberies across multiple states. This time, they were ready. But what crucial mistake did Babida make? Perhaps it was his increasingly brazen behavior, or it was because all his targets were near NFL stadiums, and he only went after them on game weekends. With his lack of foresight, ChiefsAholic's carefully constructed double life was about to come crashing down. As Babida exited the credit union, flush with his ill-gotten gains, he was met with a scene straight out of a crime drama and part comedy. Police cars screeched to a halt before his getaway bicycle, and officers with weapons drawn ordered him to surrender. And he did, likely feeling the thrill fade into a fear of death. The evidence found in Babida's possession was damning. A large bag containing $150,250 in cash, mostly in crisp $100 bills, told the story of his most successful heist yet. But it was the other items that truly revealed the extent of his criminal enterprise. Betting slips and letters related to bank deposits. Each piece was another nail in the coffin of ChiefsAholic's freedom. But even as the cuffs tightened around his wrists, a part of Babida wasn't ready to give up his double life. Benign BB gun-wielding Babida was processed and released on bond with only an ankle monitor. A 4-month mistake. A wolf on the run. Initially, Babida seemed to comply with the terms of his release. He checked in with authorities and attended court appearances. But beneath the surface, a plan was forming. One that would push his criminal career to new heights and lead to a nationwide manhunt. The moment Babida decided to cut his ankle monitor seemed to be triggered by a gambling win of $100,000. With a swift cut, he severed the last tie to the law he had and plunged into a life as a fugitive. But he wasn't content to simply hide. As mentioned before, he committed 2 more bank robberies while on the run. As news of Babida's escape spread, law enforcement agencies across the country sprang into action. The FBI took the lead, using advanced tracking techniques to follow his digital footprint. They analyzed cell phone data, monitored financial transactions, and even used facial recognition technology to scan surveillance footage from across the country. Babida, however, proved to be a cunning adversary. He used burner phones, paid for everything in cash, and constantly changed his appearance. At one point, he narrowly escaped capture by disguising himself as a construction worker and blending in with a crew at a job site. The manhunt became a cat-and-mouse game that captivated the nation. How could someone so recognizable manage to evade capture for so long? The answer lay partly in Babida's resourcefulness and partly in that $100,000 gambling win. For nearly 4 months, Babida remained at large. There were close calls, moments where law enforcement thought they had him cornered only to have him slip away. Each near miss added to his growing notoriety, turning him into a figure of fascination. But even the most elaborate game of hide-and-seek must end. On July 7th, 2023, the FBI finally caught up with Babida near Sacramento, California. The details of his capture remain unavailable to the public, but one can imagine the mix of emotions he felt as his run came to an end. As Babida was led away in handcuffs, again, the full scope of his crimes began to come into focus. Again, the man who had once been a beloved figure now faced a reckoning that would shock fans and law enforcement alike. The House of Cards collapses. The charges against ChiefsAholic now included bank robbery on 11 counts, money laundering, and transporting stolen property across state lines. But these were just the beginning. Forensic analysis solidly linked Babida to multiple crime scenes, including with the glove in the near-bank woods, while financial investigators uncovered a complex web of transactions designed to launder the stolen cash. The cumulative weight of this evidence left even seasoned FBI agents moderately impressed. But numbers can't capture the human cost. In the courtroom, bank employees bravely shared their stories, revealing the lasting trauma of Babudar's actions. They obviously had no idea all they were being threatened with was a BB gun. Their testimonies highlighted how a single act of violence can shatter a person's sense of safety and security and create a lasting trauma. For Chiefs fans, the betrayal cut deep. The wolf costume that once symbolized dedication now represented deceit. Social media accounts that had celebrated ChiefsAholic's antics fell silent, replaced by disbelief and anger. As the prosecution built its case, they focused on demonstrating the calculated nature of Babudar's crimes, arguing that his online fame was part of an elaborate cover. Likely seeing the writing on the wall, Xavier Babudar chose to plead guilty. Standing before the court, the man behind the mask finally spoke without pretense. Quote, "Every day is a reminder of the shame I must carry," end quote, he told the judge, his voice heavy with apparent remorse. U.S. Attorney Teresa Moore emphasized the far-reaching impact of Babudar's actions, from the terror-inflicted bank employees to the betrayal felt by an entire fan base. As the gravel fell on Babudar's guilty plea, it seemed like the final chapter in the ChiefsAholic saga. But for the man who lived these two lives, the story was far from over. The sentencing phase loomed, promising to reveal just how steep a price Xavier Babudar would pay for his double life. Justice served. September 5th, 2024. As the Kansas City Chiefs geared up for their season opener, their most infamous fan faced a very different kind of game day. In a courtroom just miles from Arrowhead Stadium, Xavier Babudar, once known as ChiefsAholic, stood before Judge Howard Sachs. The wolf costume was gone, replaced by a somber but ordinary suit that seemed to weigh heavily on his shoulders. Babudar's defense team, following the guilty plea, took the only remaining approach: appeal to sympathy. They brought in experts on gambling addiction, arguing that their client's crimes were fueled by an uncontrollable compulsion. They also presented character witnesses who spoke of Babudar's dedication to the Chiefs and his community involvement, painting a picture of a man led astray by circumstances beyond his control. The courtroom held its breath as Judge Sachs prepared to deliver his verdict. In the end, justice came down somewhere in the middle. Babudar was sentenced to 17.5 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $532,675 in restitution. As a cruel twist, he was also forced to forfeit property gained from his crimes, including an autographed painting of Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes. As the gravel fell, sealing Babudar's fate, a chapter closed on one of the strangest stories in NFL fandom history. Just hours later, as the Chiefs took the field against the Baltimore Ravens, the stands were noticeably missing a certain wolf. But the shadow of ChiefsAholic's crimes would linger long after the final whistle, a stark reminder of the dark side of fanaticism. The aftermath. In Chiefs Kingdom, social media buzzed with a mix of emotions. Some supporters couldn't help but remember the enthusiasm and larger-than-life persona that made ChiefsAholic a beloved figure. But for many, these fond memories clashed with the harsh reality of his crimes, creating a complex web of betrayal and disillusionment. The NFL found itself in particularly uncomfortable positions, as background checks for official fan club leaders became more rigorous in response, and some organizations even considered implementing behavioral guidelines for their most visible supporters. Banks across several states, targeted by Babudar, didn't wait for the dust to settle. Security procedures were overhauled, with many institutions investing in advanced surveillance systems and enhanced training for employees. The ChiefsAholic case became a cautionary tale, used in security briefings to illustrate the importance of vigilance in unexpected situations. Conclusion. This saga reflects uncomfortable truths about our culture. Superfans bring energy to the stands and create unforgettable moments, often becoming minor celebrities. But the ChiefsAholic case exposes a potential dark underbelly we can't ignore. Social media amplified ChiefsAholic's persona, transforming him from a costumed fan into a beloved mascot for Chiefs Kingdom. However, the same platform that built him up enabled and fueled his double life. The constant demand for content, pressure to maintain an image, and addiction to engagement create a potent mix that can drive people to extreme behaviors. The intersection of sports fandom and addictive behaviors comes into sharp focus here, whether driven by a gambling addiction or an addiction to fame, as debated by Babydar's attorney and prosecutors. It's clear that intense passion can blur the line between healthy enthusiasm and destructive obsession. We need to be vigilant about potential threats and our approach to fandom. Recognizing when passion becomes obsession and support turns into enablement is crucial. Creating a community where everyone feels safe and respected should be our priority. Let's not make another ChiefsAholic. But if we do, let's pray that that one too wields only a BB gun.